This is a story about a story of a story told by a storyteller. This picture story, however, will cover the past, present, and future in the order of real occurrences. The story is about tracing a transatlantic slave ship voyage from Elmina Castle, Gold Coast, Ghana, West Africa, to Charleston, South Carolina, U.S. America. What I want to do will be to film a simple docu-biodrama about the photographer's activities on the task of retracing a slave ship riding a sea cruise from Elmina Castle, Ghana, West Africa, to Charleston, South Carolina. The idea is to follow the route taken by those slave ships back in time to this day and time, whether riding a freighter, cargo, or cruise ship liner company boat from Ghana, West Africa to Charleston, South Carolina, will be the task in making this ideal real. The idea of riding a seafaring ship from West Africa to Charleston, South Carolina, across the deep Atlantic Ocean, retracing routes of the infamous transatlantic slave trade route, that middle passage in history, is an idea, it's a thought, it's a challenge, a task, and most definitely a transformative moment that is a part of the to-be-continued quest for ongoing knowledge in our stories and studies of Mother Africa. For Africans living in America, USA, in this particular time and place. This is what we must become knowledgeable of: the connection, our history, past, present, future, and importantly, experience that history in real time by doing it. So we must carry out the task. Research books, maps, charts, databases, logistics, travel agencies, tickets, airport, landings, and takeoff will be only a small part of the story. The important information of getting authentic documentation from the transatlantic slave trade database is the spark that started this search of past and present. Because I remember while looking at a chart in the transatlantic slave trade atlas book that it occurred to me. And there it was, an illustration on the subject showing departing ships leaving Elmina Castle, Ghana, arriving in Charleston, South Carolina. That is it. It was. I had been to both places. My father was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and could speak in the tongues of Geechee Gullah dialect. I was born and raised in the capital city, Columbia. So growing up in the Palmetto State, I visited Charleston many times and was very aware of the historical nature of the city. Now, fast forward to Africa. But it was while I was in Ghana, West Africa, where I had the opportunity as a student to study in an international study abroad program at the University of Ghana, Legon. And while doing a pivotal field trip to Elmina Castle, seeing the slave dungeons and the infamous door of no return was like seeing the mystical light. Now also remember, looking at this vital information in the transatlantic slave trade atlas, the chart showing the arrow, the path, and route from which we came, and a moment of clarity came over me. There was a story. There was the connection. We came by sea ships over the waters. We go back, return by airships over the same body of earth waters. All along in time, we are connecting. The sail ships where we as Black people, the ancestors, came by way of. More than anything else, I want to expose to people, a Black people, and to all people, the rich legacy and history of an enduring nature of knowledge that's in us. Our ancestors' life, the women whose womb we all came through into the world and into this life. this connection of Africa with this knowledge of knowing your path from whence you come. In making this connection, we realize that the ancestors are us many generations later in this only 500-year saga. We are the embodiment of them, fearless, noble, brave, strong, true genius, and the carriers of the seed of our human and worldly life. We came by sail ships and will now return and make the journey by ocean-going seafaring cruise ships to discover and know who we are. The excitement of air travel, flying in and out of different time zones, experiencing time management and misplacement, jet lag, and a sense of euphoria and thrills of being in another place on earth. And so it is, in this return to Africa, the Gold Coast, Accra, Ghana, West Africa, we land and make various plans and schedules in the task at hand. The story, as we travel to Accra, Ghana, we see the infrastructure, the bustling city, campus that becomes scenes that are beautiful as we drive to the destination that brought us here, Omino Castle, Ghana, West Coast. Years ago, as a student at the University of Ghana, I was exposed to the indigenous African light in world history. Omino Castle, as a historical world landmark, this place is very deceptive. A beautiful palm tree base, beach coast, tropical setting. But underneath the external looks lies a darker place of untold terror, exposing inhumanity for the evils that part of history started right here at this place. The whitewash appearing stone brick edifice is a picture postcard that shows you when getting the biblical field trip tour that many tourists nowadays take part in. I can say personally, Omino Castle was a profound, cutting-edge learning curve, a next-level experience in becoming who and what I am as a person in my worldview. Being in the castle, walking through the gates, seeing the dungeons, those horrible places in darkness, the smells, thinking about this was just mind-altering. It was while experiencing this place that I finally got to see the infamous door of no return. I walked slowly towards the open door, and about 5 feet from the entrance, you could see, hear, and smell the crashing sea. I stepped into the door porticos with both hands on the door sides. I stood there reflecting, taking in the awesomeness of what happened at this point, at this very historical point. I was not totally overwhelmed, but it was a little like an epiphany of ecclesiastical light, wisdom, humbleness. It was lamination, it was sorrow, it was a revelation, it was a revealing, a disclosure. It was more biblical, but for me, it was real life. I thought I heard something, a whisper. It was the whispers on the wings of the wind of the ancestors. I had found it in all its glory of existence. The door of no return. It is something that you can feel strangely connected by your humanity because you carry your ancestors in you. We are hardwired through our DNA in them. Just thinking, the mere 500 years transatlantic slave trade is only about 20 generations removed, a very short time in world and human history. It is no wonder that we feel this way. We have connected through time and this place, space. The return to the door of no return is the jumping off point for returning to Omino and film the action surrounding the castle coast, waiting for the sail ships. Realizing that the transatlantic ocean crossing ships from the West African countries to Charleston, South Carolina, is something that happened. Because of its story of historic importance to today's body of knowledge, it will happen again. When we retrace history, this history becomes fresh and alive, actually going over where the ancestors went over. Their stepping, sailing over these times and place is an ultimate learning experience. The routes of the transatlantic slave crossing are many. Brazil, South America, which receive 50% of all the African people replaced. The Big Caribbean Island, Cuba, Hispaniola, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Jamaica perhaps can account for 30%, with Mexico, Central and South America, Chile, Peru, Colombia, etc., bringing up the other half. Less than one small number, a double digits, say 8 to 15%, most landed in Charleston, South Carolina, with the amazing fact that 2 ships directly left Amina, Ghana, Gold Coast, West Africa, and sailed directly to Charleston Harbor, South Carolina. Documented evidence from the Transatlantic Slave Trade Database. Fact. The ancestors came in slave ships, and now their descendants will be making that same crossing, merely removing time and space by 400 to 500 years, only 20 or more generations later in this epic world historical event. The parade of the ships that make this ocean crossing is a story told in the future. Ocean cruise ships, freighters, cargo, expedition charter ships, etc., will be used in our story of retracing the route of Amina Castle to Charleston, South Carolina. The largest ocean-going cruise ships company will see profit, the doability of just a business plan that will continue on an amazing breakthrough, conceivably equaling that of the Hajjs to Mecca of the Middle East, whereas millions of people make their annual trip in an enactment on the recognition of sheer belief of their religious history. The millions of descendants now living in the New World will certainly see this transformative event of retracing their transatlantic passage as an epic event in their lives, as bona fide discoveries of who, what, where they came from, as reparational ideology in their lives and life of the most historical people. The mid-ocean point in the cruise were recognized memorials, dedications, the pouring of libations, meditations, all to the ancestors. The spirit of the moment is with all those who acknowledge historical undertakings by being a part of history, which will be this moment. Now, on to Charleston, South Carolina. A brief history, Charleston, landfall. Charleston was one of the main ports of entry for slaves entering America from the African West Coast. Fact. Charleston processed nearly half of all slaves coming into America. Massive waves of African, immense slave labor and wealth was a critical role in growth of Charleston and a tribute to the majority black population of the city of Charleston, being practically one-half the population in all of its recorded history. During the peak period between 1883 and 1807, an estimated 100,000 West Africans were brought through the war. It is sacred grounds for the auction blocks in the history of mass casualties. Thousands sold and died. The importance of Charleston is in its early history. By 1860, there were 4 million slaves in the USA, and 40,000 of them, 10% of the population, live in South Carolina. Africans made up 57% of South Carolina state's population. So it seems as if a proper ending to our story is ending. But now, further stories continue, beginning with the IAAM, the International African American Museum. Built as a building on the sacred hallowed ground of the old Gaston War, will be an interactive gallery in the development of humanity, contributions to the broader society. The organization will sound and rally the people's international voices, restating the IAAM is cutting-edge educational pursuit in important areas of research, markets, and foundation. A new chapter is now in the winds. What now is needed? What is needed now is simply doing things of action, making it happen. One of the defining stories of this visual project can be visualized as the opening of the IAAM, the International African American Museum, auspiciously built on the hallowed grounds of Gaston Wharf. Imagine coinciding with the opening ceremonies of the IAAM, a sail ship arriving in the harbor after a transatlantic crossing. It will be a future story told by the storyteller. For now, it is the whisper of the wings on the winds of our ancestors and descendants listening and flying back to their nests.